The priest said, "Thanks to your here and now teaching, I have penetrated right into the realm of principle and event." The Mastermind. In 1498, the 29-year-old Niccolò Machiavelli was appointed Secretary of Florence's Second Chancery, which managed the city's foreign affairs. The choice was unusual. Machiavelli was of relatively low birth, had no experience in politics, and lacked a law degree or other professional qualification. He had a contact in the Florentine government, however, who knew him personally and saw great potential in him. And indeed, over the next few years, Machiavelli stood out from his colleagues in the Chancery for his tireless energy, his incisive reports on political matters, and his excellent advice to ambassadors and ministers. He won prestigious assignments, traveling around Europe on diplomatic missions, to various parts of northern Italy to meet with Cesare Borgia, to ferret out that ruthless statesman's intentions on Florence, to France to meet with King Louis XII, to Rome to confer with Pope Julius II. He seemed to be at the start of a brilliant career. Not all was well, however, in Machiavelli's professional life. He complained to his friends about the Chancery's low pay. He also described doing all the hard work in various negotiations, only to see some powerful senior minister brought on board at the last moment to finish the job and take the credit. Many above him, he said, were stupid and lazy, appointed to their positions by virtue of birth and connections. He was developing the art of dealing with these men, he told his friends, finding a way to use them instead of being used. Before Machiavelli's arrival in the Chancery, Florence had been ruled by the Medici family, who, however, had been unseated in 1494 when the city became a republic. In 1512, Pope Julius II financed an army to take Florence by force, overthrow the republic, and restore the Medicis to power. The plan succeeded, and the Medicis took control, well in Julius's debt. A few weeks later, Machiavelli was sent to prison, vaguely implicated in a conspiracy against the Medicis. He was tortured but refused to talk, whether about his own involvement or that of others. Released from prison in March 1513, he retired in disgrace to a small farm owned by his family a few miles outside Florence. Machiavelli had a close friend in a man called Francesco Vettori, who had managed to survive the change in government and to ingratiate himself with the Medicis. In the spring of 1513, Vettori began to receive letters in which Machiavelli described his new life. At night, he would shut himself up in his study and converse in his mind with great figures in history, trying to uncover the secrets of their power. He wanted to distill the many things he himself had learned about politics and statecraft. And, he wrote to Vettori, he was writing a little pamphlet called De Principatibus, later titled The Prince, where I dive as deep as I can into ideas about this subject, discussing the nature of princely rule, what forms it takes, how these are acquired, how they are maintained, how they are lost. The knowledge and advice imparted in this pamphlet would be more valuable to a prince than the largest army. Perhaps Vettori could show it to one of the Medicis, to whom Machiavelli would gladly dedicate the work. It could be of great use to this family of new princes. It could also revive Machiavelli's career, for he was despondent at his isolation from politics. Vettori passed the essay along to Lorenzo de' Medici, who accepted it with much less interest than he did 2 hunting dogs given to him at the same time. Actually, the prince perplexed even Vettori. Its advice was sometimes starkly violent and amoral, yet its language was quite dispassionate and matter-of-fact. A strange and uncommon mix. The author wrote the truth, but a little too boldly. Machiavelli also sent the manuscript to other friends who were equally unsure what to make of it. Perhaps it was intended as satire? Machiavelli's disdain for aristocrats with power but no brains was well known to his circle. Soon, Machiavelli wrote another book, later known as The Discourses, a distillation of his talks with friends since his fall from grace. A series of meditations on politics, The book contained some of the same stark advice as the earlier work, but was more geared toward the constitution of a republic than to the actions of a single prince. Over the next few years, Machiavelli slowly returned to favor and was allowed to participate in Florentine affairs. He wrote a play, Mandragola, which, though scandalous, was admired by the Pope and staged at the Vatican. He was also commissioned to write a history of Florence. The Prince and the discourses remained unpublished, but they circulated in manuscript among the leaders and politicians of Italy. Their audience was small, and when Machiavelli died in 1527, the former secretary to the Republic seemed destined to return to the obscurity from which he came. After Machiavelli's death, however, those two unpublished works of his began to circulate outside Italy. In 1529, Thomas Cromwell, the crafty minister to Henry VIII of England, somehow got hold of a copy of The Prince, and, unlike the flightier Lorenzo de' Medici, read it closely and carefully. To him, the book's historical anecdotes made for a lively and entertaining read. The plain language was not bizarre, but refreshing. Most important, the amoral advice was in fact indispensable. The writer explained not only what a leader had to do to hold on to power, but how to present his actions to the public. Cromwell could not help but adapt Machiavelli's counsel in his advice to the king. Published in several languages in the decades after Machiavelli's death, The Prince slowly spread far and wide. As the centuries passed, it took on a life of its own, in fact, a double life. Widely condemned as amoral, yet avidly read in private by great political figures down the ages. The French minister Cardinal Richelieu made it a kind of political Bible. Napoleon consulted it often. The American President John Adams kept it by his bedside. With the help of Voltaire, the Prussian King Frederick the Great wrote a tract called The Anti-Machiavel, yet he shamelessly practiced many of Machiavelli's ideas to the letter. As Machiavelli's book reached larger audiences, his influence extended beyond politics. Philosophers from Bacon to Hegel found in his writings confirmation for many of their own theories. Romantic poets, such as Lord Byron, admired the energy of his spirit. In Italy, Ireland, and Russia, young revolutionaries discovered in the discourses an inspiring call to arms and a blueprint for a future society. Over the centuries, millions upon millions of readers have used Machiavelli's books for invaluable advice on power. But could it possibly be the opposite? That it is Machiavelli who has been using his readers? Scattered through his writings and through his letters to his friends, some of them uncovered centuries after his death, are signs that he pondered deeply the strategy of writing itself and the power he could wield after his death by infiltrating his ideas indirectly and deeply into his readers' minds, transforming them into unwitting disciples of his amoral philosophy. Interpretation. Once retired to his farm, Machiavelli had the requisite time and distance to think deeply about those matters that concerned him most. First, he slowly formulated the political philosophy that had long been brewing in his mind. To Machiavelli, the ultimate good was a world of dynamic change in which cities or republics were reordering and revitalizing themselves in perpetual motion. The greatest evil was stagnation and complacency. The agents of healthy change were what he called new princes. Young, ambitious people, part lion, part fox, conscious or unconscious enemies of the established order. Second, Machiavelli analyzed the process by which new princes rose